Good day, world. This is Buck Denver, ready for another trip into the world's most important book. And yes, I'm feeling much better now. It turns out I am what you call caffeine sensitive.
I'm glad you're back to normal, Buck. Thanks for the help, Marcy.
You're welcome. I gave him a thimble full of coffee, just right for his tiny little body.
And I feel great. Ooh, is that chocolate cake?
No sugar, no more caffeine. It's just time to do the show.
Right, sorry. Time for the show.
All right, hit it, Buck.
Righto. Where are we in the Bible?
We just finished Ezra and Nehemiah.
Right, and now it's time for the last historical book.
Which is?
Sheshbazzar?
No. He's a guy who led the Israelites back to Jerusalem.
Zerubbabel?
No, he's the guy who rebuilt the temple.
I thought maybe they wrote a book about it after they were done.
Nope. All that stuff was covered in Ezra and Nehemiah. The next book tells about something that happened after the temple was rebuilt, but before Nehemiah came back to rebuild the wall. And it isn't something that happened in Jerusalem. It happened in Susa, one of the capitals of the Persian Empire. The book is called...
Wait, before we learn about the next book, could you remind me of all the books we've already been through?
Well, sure. Let's start at the beginning of the Bible and name every book we've learned about so far. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. That's the Pentateuch. Then comes Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, and now the 17th book of the Bible, Esther.
Esther? Hey, that's a girl's name. Is this another story about a girl?
It sure is. The Book of Esther and the Book of Ruth have a lot in common. They're both about women who did amazing things that have inspired folks for thousands of years.
That's right, Brother Louie. They're also both short books that are easy to read. If you're looking for a good read in the Old Testament, you can't do much better than Esther.
So what did Esther do? Did she sew the first American flag or promote the needs of the blind?
You're thinking of Betsy Ross and Helen Keller.
Do they have books in the Bible?
No. They came much later.
They were great women too, but let's stick with Esther. To understand the story, you need to understand a little about King Cyrus's grandson. Cyrus was the first king of the Persian Empire. He's the one who captured Babylon in 539 BC and then let the Israelites go back home. By 486 BC, about 50 years later, Cyrus' grandson was now king of the Persian Empire. His name was Ahasuerus.
Ahasuerus? He sounds like a dinosaur. Oh, it's an Ahasuerus Rex!
That was actually funny.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it does sound like a dinosaur. That was his name in Persian. Today, we usually use his Greek name, Xerxes I.
Why the one? Was there gonna be a sequel?
There was, actually. Later on, there was another Xerxes that we called Xerxes II. The number tells us which one we're talking about.
Fascinating. So, what does this Xerxes I have to do with our girl Esther?
I'm getting to that. Xerxes had a couple of bad habits. First, he had a terrible temper. Second, he sometimes took bad advice. Have you heard the stories of the Persian king that took 1,200 ships and a huge army to attack the Greeks and was horribly defeated? There are now movies and comic books about it. Well, that was Xerxes. It was a terrible idea that his advisors talked him into.
What about the temper thing?
Here's a great story about that. On the way to attack the Greeks, Xerxes had to get his massive army across a river. So he had his engineers build a bridge that was almost a mile long. Before the army could cross, though, a storm came up and wiped out the new bridge. Xerxes was so mad, he called in his engineers and had them beheaded.
That's a little extreme.
Yes. Now he had to find new engineers, but he wasn't done. He had someone take a whip and hit the river 300 times.
Wait, was he punishing the river for knocking his bridge down?
He was punishing the river for knocking his bridge down.
So he takes bad advice, has a bad temper, and it sounds like he isn't too bright either.
Bad river, bad river.
Oh dear.